I pretended to be broke for 7 years now. My family, friends, and even my ex are crawling back, demanding a piece of the fortune I kept hidden. I'm sitting in my penthouse right now, 32 floors above the city, watching the sunset throw streaks of gold across glass skyscrapers. The wine in my hand costs more than some people's monthly rent, and yet, everyone in my life thinks I'm barely getting by. That's the way I've kept it for 7 years. To them, I'm Ethan, the guy who never quite made it, the one who's always working on something, but never seems to have much to show for it. The guy living in a modest one-bedroom apartment, driving a 7-year-old sedan and occasionally picking up odd freelance gigs to make ends meet. It's a good cover. Too good, maybe. Because the truth is, at 23, I sold a mobile app I'd built for $8.7 million. And no one, not my parents, not my friends, not even Samantha, my girlfriend at the time, knew. I didn't tell them because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. My family had a long history of treating me like an endless bank account, even when I was broke. Back when I was still in college, my parents would borrow money for bills or repairs that mysteriously turned into family vacations. My sister would insist I cover her share of dinners because I'll pay you back next time, a time that never came. The guilt trips were constant. Family helps family, Ethan. If I ever hesitated, my mother's voice would soften into that disappointed sigh that made me feel like I'd failed some unspoken moral test. Friends weren't much better. I was the guy who picked up the check because it was easier. I paid for road trips, covered tickets to events, even spotted people cash when they were a little short this week. I told myself it was kindness, but deep down, I knew they liked me more when my wallet was open. And Samantha, well, Samantha was the final push. When I met her, I thought she was different. She was smart, ambitious, always talking about the future. But after a year, I started noticing the cracks. She'd make comments about my little projects not being serious enough. She'd compare me to her friends' boyfriends' lawyers, consultants, bankers, as if I needed to be wearing a suit and working 80 hours a week to count as a real man. I never told her about the app deal while we were together. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I wanted to be sure she was with me, for me, not my money. Turns out, I got my answer without ever revealing the truth. One night, out of nowhere, she told me she couldn't waste her life on someone who had no ambition. Her exact words. I remember standing there, stunned, my hands still damp from doing the dishes. She packed a bag, and that was it. I didn't chase her. I didn't explain. I just let her walk out of my life. That breakup solidified something in me. I realized that if the people closest to me already saw me as less than without knowing the truth, then knowing I had millions wouldn't make them love me more. It would just make them want more from me. So I made a decision. I'd let everyone think I was broke. I moved out of my decent 2-bedroom into a modest apartment on the less Instagrammable side of the city. I sold my sports car and bought a used sedan. I told anyone who has asked that my startup hadn't worked out and that I was doing freelance gigs to pay the bills. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I invested almost every penny. Real estate, index funds, a few risky plays in startups I believed in. I spent my days learning everything I could about building wealth quietly. And the thing is, it worked. People stopped asking me for money. Friends stopped expecting me to foot the bill. Family stopped seeing me as the golden goose and started seeing me as, well, a bit of a disappointment, which, oddly enough, was peaceful. 7 years later, I'm worth just over $50 million. I own properties in 3 different countries. My penthouse, the one I'm sitting in right now, is under an LLC, so my name isn't on it. My bank accounts are stacked, my investments are thriving. And nobody knows. At least, not yet. 2 weeks ago, I got a text from my cousin Marcus. Marcus, hey man, Dad's turning 60 next weekend. Big party at the house. You coming, right? Marcus and I had always been close, growing up, but over the last few years, our contact had been more sporadic. Not bad blood, just different lives. He's the kind of guy who thrives on being in the middle of family drama while I've done my best to live outside of it. Still, I liked his dad, my uncle, so I agreed. I figured I'd show my face, shake some hands, eat some food, then disappear back into my quiet, carefully hidden life. The night of the party, I drove my visible car, the old sedan I keep for public appearances. My real toys stay in a climate-controlled garage across town. The second I pulled up, I could already feel the weight of curious eyes. My sister Lily was standing by the driveway, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my car's current market value. She spotted me and immediately put on her concerned older sister smile. Ethan, you made it. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to get the time off, she said, like I was some hourly wage worker barely scraping by. Inside, the house was buzzing, a mix of family, old neighbors, and people I hadn't seen in a decade. My uncle gave me a bear hug, genuinely happy I was there. But the small talk started fast. "Still doing the freelance thing?" one uncle asked in that tone that really meant, "When are you going to get a real job?" Before I could answer, Lily jumped in with, "Yeah, Ethan's still figuring things out." She said it like I was a teenager trying to choose a college major, not a man in his 30s with more money than the room combined. I brushed it off. I'm used to it. Then I saw her. Samantha. She was across the room, laughing with some distant cousin. I hadn't seen her in 7 years, but she looked exactly the same. Maybe a little older around the eyes, but still the same confident, put-together woman who once told me I had no ambition. We locked eyes. She smiled and started making her way over. "Ethan," she said warmly, like we were old friends catching up. "Wow, it's been forever." I nodded. "It has." She didn't waste time. "I heard you've been keeping busy. Freelance work, right?" I could hear the subtext. "So you're still not rich or successful enough for me to regret leaving." But then she threw me off. "You know, stability matters more than flash. Life teaches you that. I think I used to value the wrong things." I glanced at the ring finger on her left hand, bare, and suddenly the pieces clicked. Samantha was divorced. Before I could respond, a family friend, Mrs. Porter, who's known me since I was a kid, wandered over and said, "Oh, Ethan, I meant to ask, weren't you in the city last month? My niece swears she saw you driving a silver Aston Martin." The air shifted. Lily raised an eyebrow. Samantha tilted her head like a cat spotting movement. I chuckled and shook my head. "Nah, that must have been a rental, I wish." They seemed to accept it, but I could feel the suspicion plant itself in their minds. Later that night, as I stood near the kitchen doorway, I caught Samantha watching me. Not the casual glance of an ex remembering old times, the calculating look of someone reevaluating a decision they made years ago. That's when I decided. I was going to play along. Let them all keep believing I was barely hanging on, see exactly how far they go to squeeze help out of me, and then maybe let them see the truth on my terms. It wasn't revenge, not yet. But I had a feeling it might head that way. It didn't take long after the birthday party for the shift to start. The first sign was Lily. My sister, who normally only called me on holidays or to remind me of someone's birthday I'd forgotten, suddenly became chatty. "Hey, just checking in," she said one afternoon. "You know, life's short. Family should stick together more." It sounded nice on the surface, but Lily has never done anything without an angle. A week later, she casually mentioned her boutique business was going through a rough patch and how it's so much harder when you don't have a safety net. I played along. "Yeah, I hear that." Marcus was next. He texted me one night about this amazing investment opportunity he'd found. Something about a chain of trendy coffee shops he wanted to get in on before it blew up. "I figured we could go in together," he said. "It could really help both of us." Both of us, right? Then there was Samantha. She invited me for coffee to catch up, making it sound casual. I knew better. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, and she opened with small talk, how she'd been, how her marriage just wasn't meant to be, how she was focusing on important things now. Then came the real reason. "So I've been dealing with a bit of debt from, the divorce, and I was thinking maybe we could help each other. I've got great ideas for some projects you could—" I didn't even let her finish. "I'm not really in a position to invest in anything right now, Samantha." The smile slipped for half a second before she recovered. "Of course. I just thought maybe." And just when I thought that was enough social whiplash for 1 week, Jason called. Jason, my so-called best friend from college who ghosted me years ago after I stopped paying for group trips. He acted like nothing had happened. "Bro, we've got to catch up. I'm putting together a weekend getaway with the crew. It's going to be epic. You in?" Translation: "Come spend your money so we can all have fun." I politely declined. He pushed, saying he could find a cheaper spot if money was an issue. That one almost made me laugh. But the real turning point came a few days later. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a picture of my beachfront property. Not my name, not my account. Just a shot of the deck, the ocean stretching out beyond it, captioned, "Chilling at my friend's place this weekend. #living the dream." The friend was a guy I'd met through another business connection. He knew it was my property, but apparently didn't know I kept it quiet. The location tag was on. The comments were rolling in, and sure enough, a couple of my relatives had liked the post. I untagged myself from the few photos I was in, but the damage was done. That night, I sat in my penthouse, my real home, sipping a drink, staring out at the city lights, and wondering how long I could keep the illusion going. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Mom, we need to talk, urgently." And just like that, I knew the walls were starting to close in. When my mom said urgent, I assumed it meant something serious, maybe a health scare, maybe something with my dad. What I walked into was an ambush. I showed up at my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon, thinking it would just be the three of us. Instead, Marcus was there. Lily was there. Even my uncle, who I barely speak to, was sitting at the dining table with a mug of coffee like he'd been part of the planning committee. "Sit down, Ethan," my dad said, in that voice he used when I was a teenager and he'd found out about a bad grade. The conversation started soft, concerned, worried. "We've been talking," Mom said, folding her hands like she was about to pray. "We're worried about you. You've been drifting. No real stability, no family of your own. You're not getting any younger." I could already feel where this was headed, but I let them keep going. Then came the pivot. "Lily's been going through a hard time with her business," Dad said. "The economy is tough. She's got a great vision. She just needs a little help to get over this rough patch." And there it was. "I'm not asking for a handout," Lily said, leaning forward. "It would be a loan. Family helps family, right?" The words hit like deja vu. I'd heard them 100 times before, always right before I never saw my money again. I gave a non-committal, "I'll think about it," and tried to stand up, but that's when Mom went in for the emotional kill. She got up, walked around the table, and put her hands on my shoulders. "We don't want to see you alone and bitter, Ethan. You've always been the quiet one. You have such a good heart, but it's not good to shut people out. We just want you to be happy." Her voice cracked. She actually started crying. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have believed it was about love and concern, but I could hear the subtext loud and clear. "We need you to give us something." I kept my face calm, made the usual "I appreciate it" noises, and got out of there as soon as I could. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. I was wrong. A few hours later, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find Samantha standing there. Not in casual clothes, not in "I just happened to be nearby" jeans. She was dressed like she was going on a date, hair perfect, perfume lingering in the hallway. "Ethan," she said softly, "can I come in?" I stepped aside, mostly out of curiosity. She walked in, looked around the apartment, and turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been thinking about us, about everything. I made a huge mistake leaving you." The way she said it wasn't the raw, emotional kind of confession people make when they had a true change of heart. It was calculated, controlled, and in that moment, I knew she'd found out. About the money, about the properties, about all of it. I played it cool. "That was a long time ago, Samantha. I know, but maybe we could start over. I've grown. I know what really matters now." I could almost hear the cash register chuching in her head. I didn't give her an answer. Instead, I told her I had something in the works, a family trip I was planning. My treat. Somewhere nice. She perked up immediately. "That sounds amazing." I smiled back, already thinking about the bigger picture. If they were all going to circle me like vultures, I might as well get them all in one place and see exactly how far they go. I didn't even have to think too hard about how to set the next stage of my plan. If they wanted to corner me about sharing my money, I was going to give them the perfect arena to do it. One where I controlled the lights, the music, and the bill. So I told the family I'd found an insane deal on a 5-star tropical resort. "Friend from college works there," I said with a shrug. "Hooked me up for cheap." They didn't need to know that cheap meant $25,000 for a week in one of the most exclusive oceanfront villas in the country. When we arrived, the resort staff greeted us with champagne, fresh flowers, and personalized welcome notes. My mom's eyes lit up like she was stepping into a royal palace. My dad was already scanning the bar menu. Lily looked around like she'd just stepped into the Instagram dream she'd been chasing for years. "And Marcus?" He just smirked and said, "Guess this is what having no bills gets you." The jab was casual, but I noted it. Over the first couple of days, I kept my radar on full alert. Some family members, like my cousin Andy, were genuinely having a blast, actually enjoying conversations and activities without bringing up money. Others couldn't seem to get through 5 minutes without some backhanded comment. "Wow, Ethan," my aunt said one afternoon by the pool. "You really know how to spend. Good thing you don't have kids to worry about, huh?" I smiled politely, even as my fingers itched to pull out my phone and hit record. And I did, multiple times. I started quietly collecting little sound bites, offhand remarks, entitled comments, whispered assumptions when they thought I wasn't close enough to hear. I didn't know exactly how I'd use them yet, but I knew they'd be valuable when the time came. The unexpected twist came from Marcus's wife, Nora. One evening, while everyone else was off at the spa, she knocked on my villa door. "Mind if I come in?" she asked, glancing around nervously. We sat down, and she leaned in. "They're planning something," she whispered. "Marcus, your parents, Lily, they've been talking about confronting you. They think you've been hiding money from them, and they're going to demand you do the right thing." I raised an eyebrow. "And how do you know this?" She hesitated. "Because I told them it was a bad idea. I told them it's not their business, but they didn't listen. I figured you should know before they ambush you." For a moment, I just looked at her. In this whole mess, she was the last person I expected to give me a heads up. "Thanks, Nora," I said, finally. That means more than you think. On the last night of the trip, I didn't have to look for trouble, it found me. I walked into the hotel lounge to grab a drink before bed and stopped dead in my tracks. The entire family was there. My parents, Lily, Marcus, my aunt and uncle, and sitting off to the side in a deep red dress like she owned the place, Samantha. My father stood up, his expression a strange mix of smugness and forced authority. "We know you've been lying," he said slowly, as if savoring each word. He took a step closer. "It's time you shared what's ours." When I stepped into the lounge, the first thing that hit me wasn't the smell of stale coffee or the low hum of the air conditioner. It was the silence. That sharp, heavy kind of silence where you know everyone's just been talking about you and stopped the second you walked in. They were all there. Samantha was perched on the arm of the couch like it was her throne. Arms crossed, chin tilted just enough to scream condescending. Marcus sat back in the armchair, one leg crossed over the other, swirling a half-empty glass of whiskey like he owned the place. My sister Julia was leaning forward on the couch, elbows on her knees, her expression halfway between guilt and opportunism. Nora, sweet, quiet Nora, was the only one who didn't look like she wanted to eat me alive. She sat off to the side, hands in her lap, eyes darting between everyone else and me like she was silently begging for this not to turn ugly. "Ethan," Marcus said first, his voice smooth, in that fake nice way I've heard 100 times before. "Glad you could join us. We were just talking about you." "I gathered," I replied, moving toward the empty armchair in the corner. I didn't sit. I wanted them to know I wasn't here to get comfortable. Julia was the first to break the act. "Look, we'll just say it. We know about the money, all of it, and we know it's only fair that you share." "Share?" I repeated, tilting my head. Interesting choice of words. Samantha's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't play dumb, Ethan. We're family. Family is a team. And teams don't leave one player holding all the resources while the rest struggle." I could have laughed at the sudden sports analogy, but I didn't. Instead, I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. "Funny, I don't recall this team paying my rent when I was living on instant noodles in a basement apartment. I don't recall this team helping me keep the lights on when I was pulling 14-hour shifts just to keep my business from collapsing." Marcus leaned forward, the fake charm slipping. "That's ancient history. You could have asked, but now you're in a position to help us, and we're telling you we need help." There it was. The we. Always a collective when they wanted something. "What do you need help with, Marcus?" I asked, voice steady. "A new vacation home? Another sports car? Or is it just the principle of the thing?" Julia shot him a quick glare before speaking herself. "It's not about luxuries, Ethan. It's about balance. You can't sit there with more than you'll ever spend while the rest of us—" "The rest of you what?" I interrupted. "Ignore me? Dismiss me? Laugh at my so-called pipe dream business until it suddenly became profitable?" Samantha rolled her eyes. "God, you're so pathetic. Still holding grudges like a little kid? This isn't about the past. This is about now. And right now, you have the ability to fix a lot of problems for people who are supposed to matter to you." The word "supposed to matter" hung in the air like a dare. I took a slow breath. "You want the truth? You don't matter to me in the way you think you do. Not anymore. I learned a long time ago that family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who actually show up when it counts, and none of you did." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So that's it? You're just going to hoard it all, be the selfish little—" "I'm going to keep what I earned," I cut in sharply, "because it is mine, every single cent, and I don't owe anyone here a damn thing." For a moment, no one spoke. I could feel the heat in the room, not from the air, but from their collective fury. Julia's lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus's hand clenched around his glass. Samantha smirked, like she thought she'd still win somehow. "You'll regret this," Samantha said finally, her voice dripping with venom. I smiled. Not a nice smile, not even close. "Maybe, but so will you." And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel their eyes on me, their anger radiating like heat against my back. By the time I reached the hallway, my mind was already moving. I had a new plan forming, one that would make sure everyone saw them for who they truly were. Not in private, not in whispers, but publicly, where there'd be no hiding, no pretending, no rewriting history. If they wanted a war over what I'd built, I'd give them one. But I'd play it my way. When I left the lounge that night, my pulse was still pounding, but my head was ice cold. The words, "It's time you shared what's ours," had burned themselves into my brain like a brand. I didn't even stop to defend myself. I knew that if I stayed another second, I'd blow up in a way I couldn't take back. So I walked. Out of the lounge, out of the hotel, out into the humid night air that smelled faintly of salt water and overpriced cocktails. The resort's infinity pool glowed neon blue beside me, and somewhere in the distance, a live band was playing a lazy rendition of Hotel California. That was the song my dad used to hum when I was a kid, usually right before dismissing one of my ideas as Fantasyland nonsense. I stood there, hands on the railing, looking out at the moonlit water and thinking, they really think they can corner me like that. They weren't just asking, they were expecting, as if my success, the years of work, the sleepless nights, the failures and pivots and grinding had somehow been a joint family project they forgot to mention. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up a blank document, and started planning. Not revenge, not yet. Evidence. I needed proof, undeniable, ugly proof that every single one of them was only out for themselves. Proof I could drop like a nuke when the time was right. By sunrise, I had an idea, and it was simple enough to actually work. The next morning, I called Nora. Nora is Marcus's wife, my sister-in-law. She's smart, she's sharp, and she has the uncanny ability to keep her mouth shut when it matters. She'd been the only one to warn me about the ambush in the lounge, and for that alone, she'd earned my trust. When she picked up, she didn't bother with the small talk. They came at you last night, didn't they? She said, like a pack of wolves. I'm guessing you're not just going to let it slide? Not a chance. I told her my idea, a fake lottery win. I'd accidentally let slip that I'd won a smaller prize, nothing close to my actual wealth, but enough to tempt them. Then I'd offer them each a small cut of it if they could do a task for me. Not hard tasks, but revealing ones. Ones that would show whether they were willing to help or just in it for the payout. Nora's laugh was low and sharp. This could actually work. I'll need your help, I said, recording everything quietly. You've got it. By mid-afternoon, the rumor was planted. I made sure Marcus overheard me on the phone with a made-up financial advisor, thanking him for processing my lottery claim so quickly. I let Samantha see me looking at real estate listings for waterfront condos, and I made a show of Googling luxury watches when my father was in the room. The bait took faster than I expected. By dinner, the whispers had started. By breakfast, the next day, my mother accidentally brought it up in front of the whole table. So, she said, stirring her coffee with the slow precision of a surgeon, anything you want to share with your family? I smiled, playing dumb. What do you mean? Her eyes narrowed. We hear you've had a little windfall. Marcus jumped in. Lottery, right? That's what I heard. Samantha leaned forward like a cat scenting blood. How much? I pretended to hesitate, then sighed like I was letting them in on a huge secret. Just under $500,000. Not life-changing, but comfortable. Every face lit up in a way that made my stomach turn. I leaned back in my chair. I was actually thinking, I don't need all of it. I could share some, but only if you can do something for me in return. The hook was set. Task 1, my mother. Her test was simple. I asked her to pick up a package from a post office in the next town. Just a half-hour drive. She wrinkled her nose immediately. Half an hour? In this heat? Why can't you have it delivered here? Because I need it today, I said. It's important. Do that for me and I'll give you $20,000. She actually laughed. Sweetheart, I'm too old to be running errands. Why don't you ask one of your cousins? I just smiled. Sure, Mom. Strike 1. Task 2. Samantha. For Samantha, I made it about effort, not convenience. I asked her to help me carry some heavy boxes from a storage unit. She put her hand on her hip. You're kidding, right? Do I look like manual labor to you? It's literally a 1-hour job. $25,000 if you help me. Pass. Her boyfriend snorted from the couch. She doesn't do that kind of stuff. Strike 2. Task 3. My father. For my dad, I got creative. I told him I was thinking of donating some money to a local shelter and asked him to join me for a meeting with the director. He waved me off instantly. I'm not wasting my afternoon with a bunch of beggars. It's $30,000 for you if you come with me. Not worth it. I didn't even write down the rest of his excuses. Strike 3. I saved Marcus for last, partly because I wanted to see if he'd surprise me. Mostly because I wanted to confirm something I'd suspected for years. Marcus, for all his big brother charm, was just as self-serving as the rest of them. I told him I needed a ride to the airport 2 hours away because my car was in the shop. I said I'd give him $50,000 if he could drop me off. He agreed instantly. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd pass the test. But the day of the trip, I called him to confirm and he said, "Oh, I can't make it anymore, but if you wire me the 50 grand now, I'll hire you a driver." He didn't even try to hide it. He was willing to ditch me as long as he still got paid. Strike 4. When Nora and I reviewed the recordings that night, the pattern was crystal clear. Not a single one of them was willing to lift a finger unless it directly benefited them, and even then, they wanted to cut corners. I leaned back in my chair, the soft hum of the hotel minibar in the background, and let the truth sink in. I had my proof, and I was done pretending this family was anything more than a collection of opportunists. The next step? Make sure the whole world saw it too. After Marcus failed my lottery win test so badly it could have been a comedy sketch, I decided I'd had enough. Enough games, enough baiting, enough of the back and forth where they pretended to care and I pretended I might forgive them. The night after, I sat in my penthouse, city lights spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the marble floor like tiny stars trapped indoors. My phone was silent, no texts, no calls. It was the quietest it had been in weeks. I thought I'd feel peaceful. I didn't. The truth is, cutting off contact with family isn't like flipping a switch. It's a slow bleed. You lose a piece of yourself each time you hit block, each time you delete a message without reading it. But I also knew every moment I kept them around was another chance for them to twist the knife. So I made a rule for myself. No calls, no visits, no social media interaction. Cold turkey. For 3 days, it worked. Then on the 4th, my doorman buzzed me. Mr. Carter, there's a Samantha here. She says she's an old friend. Should I? My stomach tightened. Old friend. That was one way to put it. Send her up, I said, my voice flat. She didn't even knock. The elevator doors slid open and there she was, Samantha, in a dress that looked like it belonged in some high-end champagne lounge, her hair styled like she'd stepped out of a magazine cover shoot. Ethan, she said, breathless, we need to talk. I leaned on the back of my couch, crossing my arms. Make it quick. She walked in without being invited, typical, and started pacing. I've been thinking, she said, about us, about what happened. I know I said some things at the vacation that were harsh. Harsh? I raised an eyebrow. You called me pathetic for holding grudges? She winced but didn't slow down. I was upset. I didn't mean it like that. Sure you did? She stopped pacing and faced me, her voice softening into that tone she always used when she wanted something. Ethan, we had something. We can have it again. You and me, we'd be unstoppable. You've got the brains, I've got the social connections. You can't tell me you don't miss it. I didn't answer. I just let her keep talking, because when people are desperate, they give you all the information you need. She stepped closer, letting her fingers brush the sleeve of my shirt. You're rich, Ethan. I'm not stupid. I know. And I don't care about the money. But imagine if we were together again. Think about the parties, the events. We'd be a PR nightmare. I cut in. Her face froze. Sam, the only time you ever showed up in my life was when there was something for you to gain. And right now, you're here because I cut the rest of them off and you think you can be the one to sneak in the back door. Her eyes narrowed. The flirtation in her expression vanished, replaced by something colder. You know what? She said, stepping back. You can play this little holier-than-thou act, but you're not fooling anyone. You think you're better than us? You're not. You're just a guy with too much money and no clue how to keep people in his life. You're heartless, Ethan, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. I didn't flinch. Go ahead. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to call her bluff. You think I'm scared of people knowing I cut off leeches? If you really believe that, you never knew me at all. For a second, she just stared at me and then she laughed. That sharp, humorless laugh that used to make my skin crawl. You'll regret this, she said and turned for the elevator. I watched her go, my pulse steady, because in that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. If Samantha wanted to paint me as the villain, fine, I'd go public. But I wouldn't just defend myself, I'd put everything out there. The recordings, the fake lottery test results, every ugly, manipulative word they'd said. No more subtle games. No more quiet dignity. It was time to turn the lights on and watch the cockroaches scatter. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was anxious, but because for the first time in years, I felt a strange kind of adrenaline that wasn't tied to fear or anger. It was clarity. Nora sat across from me in my penthouse living room, laptop open, scrolling through folders we'd compiled over the last few weeks. Screenshots, audio recordings, text threads, moments of entitlement so blatant I could barely believe I'd let them slide for so long. We weren't just going to tell people what had happened, we were going to show them. Once this is out, Nora said, her eyes flicking up from the screen, you can't take it back. You sure you're ready for all of it? I leaned back on the couch. They've been playing this game for years, Nora. It's time the world sees the rulebook they've been using. She nodded, clicking a file labeled Thanksgiving_incident. _audio.mp3. My sister's voice filled the room shrill, dripping with entitlement. You don't even need that money. You've never had to work like I have. We're family shares. Unless you're saying we're not family anymore. Hearing it again didn't sting. Not anymore. Now it was just evidence. The morning after the video went live, I woke to a phone that looked like it had been through a war. Over 300 missed calls, almost 1,000 unread texts, emails, DMs, mentions, tags, all of it coming in faster than I could clear them. Some were from strangers, some from old friends I hadn't spoken to in years, but most were from the people who just a week ago were calling me selfish and ungrateful. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I stood by the floor to ceiling windows of my penthouse, sipping coffee, watching the city move below me. For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight on my chest lift, not because the fight was over, it wasn't, but because the truth was finally out there. By noon, the first wave of fallout hit. Jason's car dealership, the one he bragged about at every family dinner, had turned into a ghost town overnight. Negative Google reviews were flooding in, most of them referencing my video. Some accused him of being a manipulative leech or a walking example of why you don't mix family with entitlement. Others just posted a single word: parasite. It was brutal. And the best part, I didn't write a single one of them. Jason apparently tried to do damage control by making his own response video. But instead of coming off as the hardworking businessman he wanted to be seen as, he just sounded bitter. He claimed my edit made the family look bad and that I'd used AI to fake screenshots. That didn't go well for him. Within hours, tech-savvy commenters dismantled every one of his claims, showing metadata, timestamps, and even side-by-side comparisons, proving everything in my video was authentic. One guy on TikTok made a meme out of Jason's defensive rant, and it blew up so fast that #don't be like Jason started trending. My parents didn't fare much better. Dad tried calling me 8 times in one morning before finally sending a text that read, "You've embarrassed this family beyond repair. Congratulations." Mom sent one too. "We didn't raise you to air private matters. This isn't what good sons do." I didn't reply. Because here's the thing. What they called private matters was just a polite way of saying things we don't want anyone to know. The neighbors apparently knew now, and they weren't kind about it. I heard through the grapevine that my mom got asked to step down from her community volunteer board because someone with that much scandal around her name isn't a good representative. She cried in public. I wish I could say I felt bad. I didn't. Samantha was next. Oh, she fought hard. She posted an Instagram story with some moody black and white photo of herself, captioned, "Sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest." Then came the subtle digs claiming I'd twisted the truth because I was still bitter about our breakup. She tried to make herself look like the wronged ex. That lasted about a day before someone in the comments, not me, dropped a compilation video of her contradicting herself in interviews and podcasts. Someone even leaked a few screenshots of her bragging in private chats about milking Ethan for all he's worth before he gets boring. Her brand deals started dropping her, one by one. It was almost too easy to watch. In the middle of all this chaos, there was Nora. She'd been quiet since leaving Marcus. No public posts, no interviews, no statement. Just silent. Until she texted me. It was short, simple. "I saw your video, proud of you." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "Thanks, means more than you know." We didn't talk about Marcus, or Samantha, or the years of manipulation and lies that had pulled us in opposite directions, but there was something unspoken in that exchange, something that felt like a door cracking open just slightly. I didn't push it. Over the next week, I started noticing something unexpected. For every toxic person that faded from my life, 3 or 4 genuine ones took their place. People I'd met years ago, but lost touch with, were reaching out. Former coworkers I hadn't spoken to since my early startup days sent messages saying they'd always wondered what happened to me, and now they knew. Strangers sent DMs thanking me for showing that you can cut off family if they're toxic, that blood isn't a free pass. It was strange being seen as some kind of example, but it felt good. 2 weeks after the video, I ran into Nora in person for the first time since everything blew up. It wasn't planned. I was grabbing coffee at a small cafe downtown, and she walked in wearing an oversized sweater and no makeup, looking more like the girl I'd known years ago than the version Marcus had tried to shape her into. She smiled when she saw me. Not the polite smile you give someone out of obligation, the real kind. We talked for almost an hour, about everything except the drama, the weather, the coffee, a book she was reading. When she left, she touched my arm lightly and said, "You seem lighter now." Maybe I was. The funny thing about the truth is, once it's out there, it doesn't just change how other people see you, it changes how you see yourself. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the version of me they tried to convince the world I was. I just saw me. Whether Nora was going to be part of that future or not, I didn't know. And I didn't need to. Because whatever came next, it would be on my terms. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than noise. For the first time in months, my phone wasn't lighting up with missed calls, text messages, or some random urgent request from someone who hadn't thought about me in years. I blocked every toxic contact, muted every number I couldn't yet delete, and for the first time since this whole mess began, my world was quiet. And I loved it. I didn't make a big announcement about cutting ties. No dramatic speech, no staged confrontation. That's the thing with closure, the real kind. It's not about getting the other person to understand. It's about finally realizing they never will and you don't need them to. I quietly transferred the last bit of shared assets out of my name, pulled my stake from the one business Jason had roped me into years ago, and finalized all legal protections to keep my family as far away from my life as possible. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about freedom. My parents didn't take well, obviously. My mom left a single voicemail, shaky voice, trying to sound wounded instead of guilty. Ethan, we're still family. You can't just erase us. Yes, Mom, I can, and I did. My dad didn't bother with the we love you angle. His was short and sharp. You're making a mistake. When things fall apart, don't expect us to be there. I almost laughed when I heard that. When things fell apart before, they weren't there then either. Jason didn't even try contacting me directly. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he was still doing PR damage control for his business after the exposure. Apparently, clients didn't like being associated with someone who tried to scam his own brother. Good. Samantha's last text to me before I blocked her was peak Samantha. You're acting like you're too good for everyone now. No one's gonna want you when they see the real you. Funny. That's exactly what I'd been worried about for years. But it turns out the opposite happened. The more people saw the real me, the one who wasn't being bled dry, the more I found the kind of people I actually wanted in my life. No more manipulation, no more performative friendships, just realness. Nora and I still talked. Here and there, she'd left Marcus after the test fallout, though she never officially confirmed if my little setup was the tipping point. We grabbed coffee a few times casual, no pressure. She told me one day with this half smile, you know, you could have just told me all this years ago. I told her the truth. I didn't know if you were one of them. She didn't take offense. She just nodded, like she understood exactly what I meant. And maybe that was why I started thinking, maybe someday I'd be ready to let someone in again. Not yet, but someday. Here's the thing, I didn't stop helping people. I just stopped helping those people. Under an alias, I created a charitable foundation. No press releases, no board meetings full of smug donors looking for a tax write-off. Just quiet, direct help. Rent for a single mom about to be evicted, medical bills for a kid who needed surgery, groceries for an elderly couple who'd been skipped over by the system. No one knew it was me. No one could use it as leverage. It felt pure, like what I always wanted to do with my money. Back when I thought my family would stand beside me instead of in my way. One night, I stepped out onto my penthouse balcony. The city lights stretched out beneath me, glowing like constellations that had fallen to earth. It was quiet. Not the dead, awkward kind of quiet, but the kind that wraps around you like a blanket. I thought about everything I'd been through. The lies, the tests, the exposure, the fallout. And I realized something. Hiding my fortune had never really been about protecting my bank account. It was about protecting me. Because money changes people. And the only way to see who truly cares is to take it out of the equation. It hurt to find out how few of them did. But it felt incredible to finally know. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was free. And that freedom, it was worth more than all the money in the world.